Hello again. I'm excited to talk more about the priorities in federal AI. So during this session, we'll dive into how government can leverage AI to streamline both internal and citizen-facing services, as well as how you can develop strategies to maximize the benefits of AI. So with me, we have Andrea Brandon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Budget, Finance, Grants and Acquisitions at the Department of Interior, and then Tony James, Chief Architect of Science and Space at Red Hat, and Dave Salvanini, the CDO and CAIO at NASA. Thank you all for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so you all bring a unique perspective to the table to meet the growing demands of AI and use tech to drive efficiency across your organization. So throughout the conversation, we'll discuss the progress you've made with AI and the capabilities you're focusing on as you continue to build out the technology. So as we've seen, the new administration has released several AI directives calling on government to reduce some of the barriers around the tech to boost innovation, maintain the nation's AI advantage, and drive efficiency. So Andrea, I'll start with you. As government continues to advance the use of AI, how are you making implementations more effective and cost effective as well?
Thank you for the question. So good morning to everybody. At Interior, one of the things that we did previously was we installed DOI ChatGPT across the department at no charge to any of the different lines of business. So basically you have access to it. However, I will tell you that once it was installed, not everybody understood how to use it. And so right away I started getting emails from staff from all across the department, all the different bureaus, telling me, what is this? There's no instructions for how to use it. It's just a big black screen. So one would think, since ChatGPT has been out for a while, that they would have kind of already known how to use it, but that actually was not the case. I guess everyone's too busy doing their actual jobs to play around with it after work. But at any rate, one of the things that we did do is put together a prompt script that entail different types of prompts from the different lines of business. So of course we'd have a couple prompts from the finance line of business, a few prompts from the acquisition line of business, a few prompts from budget formulation and execution, from grants administration, from property management, et cetera. Basically teaching them how this is good. This is how ChatGPT can be used, and this is how it can be used within your line of business to help accelerate and streamline and produce efficiencies within your job. So that was one of the ways that we actually were able to execute the newest form of AI that's more readily available, actually not just in government, but across the world, and to get people accustomed to using it and ensuring that they didn't have fear of using artificial intelligence.
All right, that's super exciting. And Dave, from NASA's perspective, how are you targeting cost and efficiency as you're building out AI tools?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So as we look to build out AI, well, first let me say that the approach we've taken with generative AI, I must caveat that because obviously there's been a lot of AI work going on at NASA for decades. With generative AI is to, one, get the workforce comfortable with the tools and the capabilities. Two, make those tools and capabilities available within the security boundary of nasa.gov. And then three, equip them with the appropriate knowledge. So that's what we've been doing. We have not necessarily pursued use cases emerge, but we have not necessarily through a formal governance process, let's say racked and stacked these 5, 10, 20, 30 use cases and said, oh, okay, we're going to come up with an answer to that problem. Here it is, and thrust it. Right. What instead we've taken is sort of more of a grassroots, expose people for the tools, with the tools, get them comfortable with them, get them learning how to prompt, get them starting to understand how the tools can help them on their day-to-day, and then letting the use cases emerge from that awareness. That's been rather successful. We kicked all that off when I was first appointed as CAIO last summer with something called a Summer of AI campaign, which was really a 3-month surge of training and learning activities across the agency. We directly touched about 1/3 of the entire NASA workforce through that. And it was quite successful. So I look at this from the perspective of people, process, technology. So give people the technology they need, have some process to manage that technology, and then deal with the people part of the equation, because giving them tools without helping people understand what they can do with those tools. What's interesting, I was looking at some traffic just the other day in one of our communities of practice, and they were talking about the relative effectiveness of certain models as it relates to how they were prompted. And, it was, some of the terms were, I'm not particularly impressed with XYZ model because, when I prompt it, I don't feel like I get complete answers. And so we also have to make people quite aware of all the limitations of generative AI. So from an efficiency perspective, we're putting the tools in the hands of the workforce. We're letting them get comfortable with, learn, and then start to find ways in which those tools can be more capable. I know in meetings, summarization, that's huge. When you think about the ability to be able to pull together a transcript and summarize that using generative AI in a matter of less than a minute, that's huge. When it comes to processing large amounts of text documents and summarizing them, that's huge as well. I've done, even in my own work, things that would have taken me weeks in a day. And other people, of course, are seeing those benefits across the agency. What's challenging for us right now is figuring out how to effectively measure that. So if putting the tool or a set of tools in the hands of an employee cost X, am I getting that value back? And is that investment, worthwhile? I think we all anecdotally believe that yes, there's a lot of time savings from using these tools, but I think there's the ability to be able to effectively measure that is still somewhat challenging.
Right, that makes sense, and I'm excited to learn more about some of those measurements, some of the use cases. You set up this conversation well. So, Tony, from your perspective, how are you approaching some of these calls that we've heard from the new administration?
Well, so I think for Red Hat, an area that we're really focused on is helping agencies build and run AI models and AI-enabled applications as easily as possible. And so, we do that by offering a number of platforms, because we are a platform company. We offer a number of platforms that can be hosted in your corporate data centers, in cloud environments, or potentially in the case of NASA, up in space. And so our kind of tagline is that we want to offer platforms that can run any application in any environment, of any size. And so our CTO, my boss, Chris Wright, at Summit, or Red Hat Summit this year, that's our yearly conference, he kind of extended that tagline to AI, where we want to be able to enable you to host any AI model in any environment, right, at any given size.
Right, yeah, that's exciting. And Andre, I'll come back to you. You mentioned the new Gen AI tool that you've been using, and Dave alluded to some new tools as well. So I want to get a little deeper into that. What are some of the other use cases that you have been developing at Interior, and what do those look like?
So basically, we have used AI several times, where we even have a best practice with our grants, wherein the first use case that we rolled out was we built an AI that could actually tell us what errors we were posting on usaspending.gov in some of the data fields. Of course, we thought our data was pretty clean and pretty good, but after we put the AI on it, it actually came back and told us that there was a problem with one particular data field. I won't mention which one it is because you'll all go out and look for it. But it showed us that the grants specialists in our department found a little bit of a hack where they could actually put in as minimal information into a particular data field, and so that the grant system would move on to the next part, and so that they could hurry up and get the information in and get it posted. Well, the information was, in some instances, just a sentence when you really needed a paragraph to explain what the grant project was about. So and it gave us specifically which ones. Yeah, and there was quite a number. And we actually knew which bureaus and which specialists to go back to. So the AI was pretty thorough in this sense, and we were able to get the information corrected. And we actually used it to help us do some of the corrections. So that was really good as well. And so now we are actually in the grants area as well. We're actually using it to go into sam.gov and look at the catalog of federal domestic assistance listings that each department is required to list for financial assistance. And we're using that to show us outdated information. The assistance listings are due to be updated by September 1st of each year, and it's usually a very tedious process, and it does take months, and we're actually using AI to take a look at some of the information, help us update it, streamline it, and it's working out very well. So we're finding various ways that we can use AI, and in those models, we're actually building it to address the needs that we have. But I think we'll talk a little later probably about the other AIs that we're using that are actually built into some of the systems that we have. So.
Yeah, reading my mind. That's coming up. I think that might be the next one. But Dave, before we get into that, what are some of the use cases that you've been developing at NASA?
Yeah, no, thank you. So there more recently, specifically again to generative AI, I'll give you a couple of examples. One is something called CMODA, which is Crew Medical Officer Decision Assistant. What this is NASA has had space presence, astronauts in space for well over 50 years. And every time we have astronauts in space, we collect an enormous amount of medical data. That data has been, of course, is in a well-curated corpus. The CMODA sits on top of that and is intended to allow a crew on long-duration space travel to be able to query that data in the event of, let's say, a medical incident for an astronaut in space. If you think about long-duration space travel, beyond the moon to Mars, for example, and you think about the fact that the time frame is about 7 months one way, and then also think about the fact that there are times when that crew is not in communication with, let's say, mission control. If a medical emergency were to occur or a medical incident were to occur, that crew has to be equipped to be able to, address it. So CMODA is a resource for them that allows them to query that rich repository of medical data and help diagnose an incident. There's even imaging capabilities. So if you think about an ultrasound image of an anatomical feature of an astronaut in a near zero gravity environment, that looks rather different than it would on Earth. So you can't just go by that. What you have to do instead is you have to retrain the model and teach it what, let's say, a particular medical condition might look like in that type of a condition. That's an edge use case. That's literally running on a vehicle that does not have access to a cloud, and supporting astronaut health. I'll give you another quick one, and that is text to structure. So text to structure is a group of mechanical engineers who have learned that I can prompt a set of CAD/CAM tools using generative AI to design a structural member. So what we've done is we've evaluated, let's say, human design versus an AI-generated design. And we've learned that the AI-generated design is certainly produced faster, but it's actually lighter and exceeds the tolerances of the human version. If you look at them, they're quite different, right? So the human design is usually very linear, boxy and angular. The AI-based design, because of the way it's able to calculate the stresses and loads, is almost skeletal in nature. It's curvy. It's rather different, and it has lightning holes well placed in such a way that it's and it's designed in a quarter of the time. So we're doing a lot of work with text to design. We've blown that out to the point where if you take a satellite structure, for example, which has a lot of similar components, you can actually recreate those design features over and over and over using text to structure, Gen AI enabled technology. So those are a couple of, and there's many more.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And Andrea, as I said, you read my mind, so I know that you're also building AI into these systems. You have an interior, including the enterprise-wide financial management system. So could you tell us more about that journey and the outcomes you've seen so far?
Yes, actually, the system, we just upgraded this past October 2024 to the SAP S/4HANA Financial Management Platform. And it actually has artificial intelligence built into it for not just like business intelligence, predictive analysis on that data, but also it has chatbot so that it can actually provide information very quickly. It can actually scurry the information across all of our data fields in financial management and provide much more insightful data real time for financial management purposes and especially for audit purposes. So that's going really, really well for us. In addition to that, we use all of Microsoft's products. So Microsoft, as you all know, has built Copilot into their Word, their Teams, their PowerPoint, et cetera. So one of the things that we did for upskilling the staff is we took a group of people to Microsoft in Roslyn to have a day-long training on all of those products and the Copilot use cases of how we could use it so that we can make our jobs more efficient. So these are actual systems that we use every day, and we wanted to look at how we could use them differently and how we could be more efficient. If you have Copilot built in, if you have AI, let's use it and let's actually upskill the staff. So basically, we took a limited number of people, but then we had them come back and then do train the trainer type of situation. So it's kind of the same old business model, train the trainer. You send out a group of people to learn how to do it, and then you have them build more use cases, and then they come back and teach everybody else. And slowly but surely, between the SAP S/4HANA and the Microsoft Copilots that are in all of our systems and all of our Microsoft products, and also the DOI ChatGPT, we are really finding massive amounts of use cases, and we see people that are becoming more adept to using artificial intelligence and less afraid, because that was the issue we had a couple of years ago. Like as we were moving into this cycle, we at DOI had used more bots because they're more structured and people were felt they had more control over the bots, and so we really rolled out a lot of robotics process automation in our acquisitions process, in our property processes, et cetera. But now people are really jumping on the bandwagon with artificial intelligence. So we're going to continue on with using SAP S/4HANA with more insight into our financial data, more ways that we can do tracking and reconciliation, not just quarterly, but on a daily basis and so forth, and catch some of our issues and concerns, not just as far as technical errors, but spending, being able to look and see what's being spent, why it's being spent, et cetera. And that's very important, especially right now.
Right, that makes sense. And when we talk about jumping on the AI bandwagon, it sounds like you both have interesting use cases in the works, and there's a lot of success already. But Tony, I'd like to turn it over to you. When we look at some of these successes, what are some of the challenges that go hand in hand with AI development and adoption?
Great question. I think one of the challenges that I've seen in my role at Red Hat, collaborating with various different federal agencies, is that a lot of the agencies are split up into various different silos. And each one of the silos, if they're working on an AI project, there's not a lot of central governance. And so they have a lot of freedom to pick and choose what AI models they're going to base their work off of, what tool chain they're going to use to serve these models, all those kinds of things. And so we feel that there's a lot of added benefit to having a common platform that can host, your traditional workloads, whether those are virtual machines, containerized, what have you. But that platform can also host and enable your AI teams to, develop and kind of test these AI models, put them through pipelines, all those kinds of things. The other challenge is because AI is so, I'll say new, it's not really new, but you know what I mean. There's so many different ways that folks can implement stuff that what you do at NASA, let's say a contractor leaves NASA and joins your organization, the skills that they bring may not directly translate to the tool chains that you have available to them. So I think there's also a tremendous opportunity for federal agencies to really lean into these strategic vendor partnerships so that we can help bring some standardization to your AI use cases that you're deploying across the agencies.
Right, and I'm going to stick with you for the next one. So as we're overcoming challenges, how can government agencies operationalize AI and remediate some of maybe initial issues they're seeing with the technology?
So I think my previous answer, kind of somewhat applies to that around having a common platform. That common platform enables your teams to really learn the platform that's going to be running the applications, and so that operational overhead of managing, keeping things online is kind of taken out of the equation, right? Because they're more comfortable with it, things like that. The other angle, which I touched on briefly, is the strategic vendor partnerships, but that also brings with it the enablement capabilities for the staff at these federal agencies so that they're not chasing the latest and greatest in terms of, Meta just released some brand new version of a model. Can I run that in my agency? Like, do you really need to run that latest version of it, right? Do you need that's going to change in 3 to 6 months, or do you want something that you can operationalize that'll be online and supported in your organization for 12 months plus?
Right. That makes sense. And I want to go back at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about change management. So Andrea, David, how are you all approaching change management to upskill the workforce? Andrea, we can start with you.
So I think that what was mentioned earlier about having governance and structure is the same. So across DOI, we already have many different working groups and councils for like financial management, financial assistance, the acquisition council, et cetera. Basically using that same structure to begin to look at different ways that we can use artificial intelligence, and also to talk about some of the challenges, because you kind of mentioned, what are some of the different types of risks and challenges that we may have trying to implement across the department. And as we know, one of the biggest fears about artificial intelligence is that it has hallucinations sometimes. Sometimes the data is not real. Also, when we train up an AI, sometimes we put our own biases into it accidentally. We don't even realize we have them, et cetera. So basically having a governance structure where it allows us to have discussions, open discussions, coming from the bottom up, so the actual worker bees, the line of business people, the staff that are doing the job, where they have an ability to talk amongst themselves and to bring it up to middle management and up to executive leadership. And we can talk about the various things that are going on, the things that are found. If we find hallucinations, why? Let's talk about how to resolve it. If we find, because why did it come up with something fake? If we find that it had biases in some of our HR data, then we obviously keyed that in, so we need to figure that out amongst ourselves. Where is our process, our actual business process, having a lack, and that will cause that type of situation? In addition to that, having the current infrastructure and councils and working groups to talk about risks. So we talk about normal risks within the business, the lines of business, but then talking about AI risks as well, and then marrying the two. I happen to believe that the newfound AI freedom that we'll have with agentic AI will be very helpful with actually checking and balancing some of these issues and concerns. So we have a lot of different working groups that are part of the overarching governance structure across DOI that we actually discuss these things and we bring it up to executive leadership. And then we look at resolution. And do we need to shut something down? Not yet, but we have mechanisms in place for if we need to shut down. So basically the governance structure is where you always hear about the human in the loop. Our governance structure is our humans in the loop. It's not just one human in the loop, it's all of us looking at it constantly, doing checks and balances. It's us checking our technology that we've put in place.
That's a great way to put it, making a mental note that is the pull quote from this session. David, and how are you approaching change management?
Thank you for the question, and I would echo the comments about governance being important. We have a tiered governance structure as well, where we've got a working group level of practitioners, and then of course we have a very executive level of critical decision makers from a strategic perspective to guide the journey of AI at NASA. We have actually on staff now a certified change manager because there's a discipline around how organizational change should be managed, and eliciting the expertise of someone in that field has been very, very helpful, just in how we even communicate about the AI capabilities and how we package information about them. And she's very, very adept at seeing opportunities to, hey, there's a technology coming, there's a campaign of communication that needs to occur. Part of our CAIO team as well is a graphics person, a communications person. So we have made an investment and realized the importance of being able to get ahead of the need to communicate effectively across the workforce. And then through a number of different events. Hackathons are big, getting people doing things, getting people sort of inspiring that competitive spirit. We have something called a Spark Challenge right now where people are basically submitting AI use case opportunities, and those are going to be evaluated for potential implementation across the agency. So that's yet another example. So really trying to inspire the grassroots to get involved. And then a lot of it is around effective prompting. What tools for what use cases. The effectiveness of generative AI is only as good as both the data, but also how effectively it's prompted. Right. So a lot of the change is around dealing with those variables as well. So it is you can't put enough energy into when you're dealing with an agency. Well, certainly. Department of Interior is massive. NASA, is on the order of about 16,000 civil servants. It takes a lot of work. And NASA has a very decentralized culture, right? Because, and you hit on this earlier, we'll have centers solving the same problem in multiple places. So a lot of my role is about, well, how do I orchestrate that in an efficient manner so that I don't have each center trying to solve the same problem over and over again? Because that's quite inefficient. And during these times, we don't have the capacity for that. So a lot of the change is also really coordination and orchestration across the agency and getting people aware of, let's face it, the CAIO function it's a little over a year old. So even just helping people understand and talking about AI governance, it's mixed. Some people are, they're all in and they get the value, while others are very put off by it because they look at it as, well, you're going to slow me down, you're going to hinder me, you're going to control what I'm doing, you're going to tell me no, those types of things. So there's a balance that has to be achieved there. So there's a whole narrative around how do you now basically get people to embrace the importance of, let's say, governing an AI journey across an organization. Because there's risk if it's not done well. Right. And we see that playing out in organizations. There's things in the news all the time.
So when we talk about risk and effectiveness, David, this is my last question before we turn to Q&A, so get ready. But how are you measuring the effectiveness? Or what are the tools to measure, like, okay, I'm investing in this AI and this is proving that it's worth it, or maybe it's a case where we don't need it?
We've had a number of different approaches. Certainly there's the efficacy of the tool itself. In other words, what is the quality of the outcome compared to what is expected? And if I were to compare, let's say, the quality of that output to what a human would produce, how much of a gap is there? So that would be one, right? What's the quality of the AI-generated work? Two is, really we've taken an angle from the perspective of quality of life for the workforce. We do these FAV surveys every year, and one of the big hits at NASA is work-life balance. We have an incredibly dedicated workforce that loves what they do, but they work themselves tirelessly. So can we give them a tool, and then can they, in fact, tell us that, oh, that tool actually allowed me to turn my 10 or 12-hour day into maybe a 9-hour day? So that's the other approach we're taking. So those are a couple. We've got a number of survey mechanisms that we use. So when we roll out a capability, we make sure that we are telling those who are piloting it, for example, that you have a responsibility to respond to our surveys so that we can collect data about how it's helping you. We compile that data, we analyze it, and then we use that as part of a decision algorithm to determine whether it's worth continuing to pursue or not. We have this notion of taking sort of MVPs or smaller scale pilots and graduating them to enterprise. And we want to use these measures as a way to sort of inform that.
Right. All right. Go ahead.
I did want to hit on the cybersecurity angle
Yes.
briefly.
I know, yeah.
So just by a show of hands, how many of you are running some form of open source software in your organization? Okay. Those same folks, how many of you actually have folks that take the time to, when you download a piece of open source software, audit the code behind it? We got one? Couple? So the same kind of principles should hold true when we start talking about AI, right? So there's a number of kind of open source style licenses that are being applied to these AI models to assure you that, it was trained on data that's freely available, blah, 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 all these kinds of things, right? But outside of talking about hosted solutions like ChatGPT and all those kinds of things, when we start talking about running AI models in your own data center or in your own kind of managed cloud environment or whatever, there are other kind of considerations to take into to think about, right? Things like securely applying model updates. So you talked about earlier retraining the model, and so pushing out a new version of that. Well, when you push out a new version, how do you control who can push that new version and verify that the version that you think is being pushed is actually what ends up being run? And then a lot of these AI models as well, when you interact with them, it's over some kind of an API. And so we have to talk about API security, things like that, because let's say there's a rogue actor in your organization and that API is open, they can find out a lot of information depending on what that AI model has been trained on, right? So just simply asking the right questions. So I think when we start talking about cybersecurity, just like for years we've been shifting security left in the application development lifecycle, I think we have to really consider cybersecurity as we look to operationalize AI within these federal agencies.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. So we have 1 minute left. Any questions?
Hey, thank you so much for your comments. Quick question. Roles in this space, in the AI space, developer, deployer, user. Your thoughts on who should do and who should be responsible for what in each of those categories. Clearly, two of you spoke about use cases and your agencies putting data into the model, into the tool. What does that look like? What are those responsibilities? As you know, last year, I think we had 700 plus state draft legislation on trying to come up with the right balance. What's the balance for you guys?
I'll speak as far as at the Department of the Interior. We have a lot of business management and program management people. So the business management will be the grants, the acquisitions, the financial management, et cetera, the HR, human resources, et cetera, that actually work with our contractors, our vendors, to build models out, or as I said, get training on AI that's already in place. However, we have to collaborate with our CIO shop on as was stated, with our cybersecurity parts of it, and to make sure, and also with our solicitor's office to ensure that we have appropriate information that's being loaded in that's not going to be a security threat or or a legal threat or anything of that nature. So it's actually like an integrated project team that's working at all times on all of our different AI. Usually the different use cases start from the bottom, from the program people. The program people I'm talking are the mission people, like at the National Park Service or the Bureau of Land Management, et cetera, or USGS, Geological Survey. They come up with the business cases, the use cases, and then they want to pull it together with whatever vendor, AI vendor that they're using. But we always have to go through our CIO shop and our solicitor's office to ensure that we have all the parties at the table to make sure that the product that we are putting together doesn't cause us any harm. We may not be perfect, but we're working on it. But yes, I would say it's a team. It's a team effort.
Right. Well, thank you all for joining this discussion. It gave me a lot to think about. I'm looking forward to catching up in the future about this, and I'll turn it over to Mike to introduce our next session.